Greetings and good morning, everyone. Welcome to Catalyst Energies. My name is Dee. Thank you for joining me. I'm so grateful that you're here. This is the daily medicine transmission for April 6th, 2022. Welcome back, everyone. If you're new here, welcome. Thank you for being here. Hello to the Starseed Fellowship. We'll be meeting on Zoom tomorrow afternoon. I'll be putting out the link through our private Telegram group and also on Subscribestar, so you have access to that. So if that's something that kind of piques your interest, especially because this is going to be a very Starseed-oriented transmission today, there's a short 7 or 8 minute video that's linked in the description box below called Intro to Starseed Ministry. It'll also be linked at the end of this video if you're on YouTube. And that just gives you, like I said, an introduction into what really inspired the concept of Starseed Ministry, what the fellowship really represents, and what we are doing, and also to just some of the more specific types of content that you would have access to as a monthly subscriber. So that's in the description box below, the link to Subscribestar, all of that stuff. So it is going to be a Starseed oriented transmission today. How many people are feeling like a Saturnian heaviness right now? I know that I am personally. I had one of those experiences again where as I'm coming out of my sleep and but still have the overlay of my subconscious, even though I'm coming into waking up for the day, there is just the overlay of Saturn. And I'm like, what is this all about? I also had very interesting and kind of sad dreams, feeling very isolated, feeling a very distinct boundary or even fortress in my sense of identity. I do have Saturn in my first house. So Aquarius people, this may be a source of strength and authority, but also what I find is with Saturn, especially in the first and seventh house, there is a very distinct wall between you and other that is very obvious, and sometimes will lead people, especially if it's in the natal chart in particular, will lead people to compensate in some way, either by, going even further within themselves, allowing the gravity of their own authority to kind of pull them in even further, or just provide a sense of real strong identity and authority of self. But especially in the first house, that Saturn will be my way or the highway. So I think that there is right now, as we've allowed the battle within ourselves to kind of play out over the last day or so, now we're getting into Orion starseed markings with the moon in Gemini. There are, as you can see here, this image, I believe, is from a deck, a Starseed Oracle deck called, I think it's just called the Starseed Oracle. And this is actually the card for Mintaka. So we're going to go over that today because Saturn actually will be in a direct trine with Gemini as it's in conjunction with Mintaka. And Mintaka is a star. It's in the belt of Orion. And Mintaka and Starseeds have memory of their water world. And I actually did post an article, a scientific article, that was showing how until very recently, there was a general consensus that life would have a very difficult time developing, if at all, on a distinctly water world because of the necessity of phosphorus to be released into the atmosphere, and that comes from continental rock and solid material. And this paper was about the experimental data about how there would be enough phosphorus released from basalt rock under the ocean that could then lead to the chemical process, the biochemical process for life. And I commented, I was like, yeah, this is what Mintaka and Starseeds have just know innately, because it is a water world. And sometimes I wonder, and I'm sure there are other people that can speak to this, or there is specific information that other people have gotten through intuition, through channeling, whatever, about Tiamat being that world, right? And the destruction of Tiamat is something that many of us as starseeds, and I would say a lot of just humans in general, there is a resonance that is so linked from Tiamat, obviously, to here. And, Tiamat is part of the Sumerian and Babylonian, mythology and cosmology as well. So without launching into all of those things, Mintakan starseeds are, I think, really longing for home. And part of that is because there is no more home. The water world has ceased to exist around the star of Mintaka. And what's happening now may be such a strong resonance with that I think there's just a lot of starseed homesickness, and the weight and the gravity of Saturn right now is just bringing the seriousness of a lot of things up to the surface and really kind of poking at some of these more vulnerable places. So we'll look at the astrology, of course, for today, because yesterday it wasn't very active in terms of our own internal experience. But the moon in Gemini all day today is going to be making lots of connections to obviously all of these Orion starseed markings all day. Now remember, there's a lot of stars in the constellation of Orion, so there's a lot of star systems, there's a lot of variability with these star seeds, but there's going to be favorable connections to all the Aries energy, and the sun in Aries is something we're going to focus on again with starseed lineage today. The trine to Saturn and Mars, both in Aquarius. And so again, there is a sense of harmony and stability, mental stability, intellectual stability, and ideas and concepts. And the word, right? The consciousness is... There is a stable connection from the two malefics, right? Saturn and Mars. And so it's kind of a bitter pill, a bittersweet pill in some ways. But then the moon is going to square Jupiter and Neptune, which are naturally in square right now to the Orion starseed positions, and specifically Mintaka right now. And so this was a conversation that somebody had brought up in relation to the article I posted. So if you're not on Telegram, that's like the only social media that Catalyst Energy is using currently. And so I do post a lot more content from other people and things like... a lot of scientific papers, articles, things like that, and just sharing our experiences as well. But it was from that conversation that brought up, I was like, yeah, Jupiter and Neptune are in Pisces, right? The ocean, right? The water, the full experience of the cosmic consciousness, that Jupiter and Neptune are about to be conjunct not that long from now in this realm. And so naturally squaring Mintaka, and for as much as this is a water world, and you could see that this individual that's pictured in this card is a mermaid. And I'm actually going to show you real quick. I already posted this on Telegram too, but it's just to show like how, to keep up on other aspects of what I transmit. So I did a reading that I usually do for myself, like privately, but I wanted to share it. And the whole breakdown is on Telegram, but I want to point out, before I even came to any of this Mintakan connection that I wanted to talk about today, I got the Ace of Hearts, which is this mermaid, and it's reversed, right? And the rest of the reading, you can go to Telegram and get an idea how it is about being, there's faith, there's a sense of healthy ego, right? The Two of Clubs, and then the Five of Diamonds, nature, right? Being in alignment with natural frequencies. Again, there's that Pleiadian nature as well. So I think that starseeds are homesick. I think that the gravity of what is going on is starting to sink in, and what that has been doing in terms of our relationship with others, right? And so this may be coming out in your dreams. This may be coming out in your lack of sleep. There's a lot of anxiety going around, depression. And of course, that is a response to what is happening at a global level, at a societal level, as we go through this process of evolution, basically, right? We have to, there's things that will be destroyed in order to transform, right? Because in order to transform, you're pretty much accepting that the old pattern will change. And for us, that is, death, basically, and change is something that humans really have a hard time with in general. So, but Mintakan starseeds are feeling it and have been feeling it. I've been getting people lately for starseed readings and seasonal forecast in particular that have this Jupiter, Neptune, Pisces, or Virgo in their charts. And so this is just getting poked at and prodded, and a lot of sensitive feels around this right now. And, tapping into this might be a little bit difficult, but strangely enough, it's kind of like the responsibility aspect of Saturn and maybe the action in accordance with that. Remember, Saturn and Mars just came into that conjunction. It's still very much relevant. They are only a degree apart, if that. So both of them in a trine to Gemini moon, starseed locations, Mintakan starseed location in particular. There's something here about this Saturnian nature. So we're going to actually look at some fixed astrology and the constellations and more of those planetary influence on these fixed stars that might help fill in some of these gaps, put in some more pieces of this puzzle together. Because I really don't know how today is going to go, other than the vacillation or the oscillation within ourselves back and forth is now going to be much more powerful and interacted with the other planets in our solar system. But I think too that there's something here to kind of really discipline us in some way. So, and it's okay to feel this way, right? We all feel this way. Everybody I know that's a starseed or identifies as a light worker, there's been a moment, if not many, where you're like, okay, I'm done, right? Can I go home now? And I feel like there's a lot of that right now that is swirling around. So let's look at some space weather. Actually, first, just to get an idea, because we are expecting, oops, that's not what I wanted to do. We definitely are expecting some solar weather coming in the next 2 days. So there's 2 CMEs that are on their way to make impact. We have now moved, there's a coronal hole that's facing us that I'm going to show you. So there's solar wind that's also incoming right after these CMEs. But right now, the geomagnetic field and experience is pretty calm, and you can see it in the Schumann. Now, this hasn't been fully updated for this morning, obviously, so go back and look. There may be a change for all we know in terms of the Schumann, but it looks pretty mellow right now, and you'll see that the KP index as well is pretty settled for the most part. So there has been a lot of variability, but things are settled for the moment. So that's just what I wanted to show you in terms of the Schumann, right? And we'll come back to that. So the things, just to kind of remind ourselves again, right? You can see that the solar wind speed has been dropping considerably over the last 2 days, and it's getting very, very low. You can see the KP index is still green, so it's calm. It is a little bit more impactful than it has been the last day or so. So you can start to feel it. It's starting to get a little bit more active in terms of geomagnetic and the magnetosphere in general. It's starting to be excited. And from what I understand, when there's coronal holes, that increases the potential for seismic activity as well. So there's already been a lot of 5 to 6 magnitude earthquakes this morning, and so I wouldn't be surprised if we see another larger 6 to 7 somewhere in the next day or so. But this, it's calm right this moment, at least for now. It's not going to stay this way, as we probably can anticipate. So if we look at spaceweather.com, the thing I want to show you about this is just, a longer education about our sun and how it impacts us magnetically and electrically. And that has an impact on weather and climate and, like I said, volcanoes and earthquakes. It's all related to our sun and what it's doing. So not only does the sun flare from sunspots, there's also a thing called magnetic filaments, and you can see they're very well identified here, and they're circled, and they look like these kind of serpentine things, and they're tubes of magnetism that are filled with plasma, kind of like a coronal hole stream, but they are just, moving around the atmosphere around the sun, but they're really unstable. So when these things blow, they also send CMEs, and there's a bunch of them right now that are facing us, and they can be very powerful if they explode, or if they're very unstable. So when they do erupt, they can hurl plasma towards us, and they're already plasma-filled tubes. So just imagine the tube erupts as a result of unsteady magnetism all around the sun, and then just hurls more plasma at us. So this is something we may be getting boom, 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 day after day after day, and impact on the magnetosphere, which will inevitably impact the ionosphere, which is the next layer down. And that's where there seems to be problems with satellites, and in particular, and then we see the global electric circuit in that area that has an impact on weather, climate, and seismic activity. So just to, again, familiarize ourselves with what's going on right now. See, KP3, it's quiet right now. And remember, I put that chart up that I got from Suspicious Observers on their app. I put it up on Telegram that shows you like when there is more of a risk for certain types of physiological issues and health issues and psychological health issues that go along with increased solar storm activity. So here's the coronal hole. Solar wind flowing from this should reach us on the 10th or 11th, which is going to be, Sunday into Monday next week. So it feels like a lull, and it also feels like that right now, we're going to look at the chart here. It does also feel like that right now it's still kind of, I wouldn't say it's quiet, but the disturbance is coming from the sheer gravity of what's going on. And I think that many people are, even if you're not necessarily a starseed, and a lot of people are and don't even know, because a lot of people have come into this experience intentionally, and many have the innate frequencies of other experiences and other star systems that are here for a very specific reason. And it's in your chart that you can get a lot more insight specifically on what that is, and then when those things are going to become relevant based on the current astrology. So that's why the seasonal forecast is so helpful. Give you all these general themes about what's happening over the next couple of months. So we are going to start a new eclipse season very soon, and so there will be a report and a reading sale for that time period, which takes us from May into the next eclipse season, which is probably going to be November, December, roughly, maybe a little earlier, because it's all about where the nodal axis is that creates the potential for eclipses. So, boy, oh boy, guys. We'll go over the chart, and then there's, there's some things that I want to share about fixed astrology so that we can kind of see where our power truly is coming from. And it's interesting where the sun is. It's in Aries, as we know, and this is coming into a position 16 to 17, 17 to 18 over the next 2 days with a star called Tau Ceti. And Tau Ceti is a star that's in actually the constellation of Cetus. So I'm going to show it to you right here. The sea monster, right? You can think of it as the Kraken. You can think about it as a whale, right? Cetus really is kind of like the root of cetacean, right? So you have the whales and the dolphins and porpoises, and basically mammals that dwell within the sea. And I wonder if mermaids and Mintakan beings would fit into this general category as well, because they live on a water planet, and this represents that dynamic. So in ancient astrology, again, you're looking at the sea monster, right? The Kraken. So Tau Ceti is right here in the belly, right? Now, this is a starseed position. Tau Ceti is very similar to our sun. It's a same spectral class, a G class. It's solitary. It's not part of any kind of binary or larger system. Many star systems actually are more than one star orbiting around a central point of gravity. But we have a singular star now. Some people have asserted that we were a dual star system at one point, and Phaeton, right? Phaeton was the sibling and was destroyed in some way. Now Jupiter is is a gas giant, and so it could have been, and it's a gas giant, and it has a lot of mass and a lot of density, so there's a possibility that Jupiter at one point was going through a possible accretion process to become a sun, but didn't. So it's interesting that Jupiter is related to Zeus and Enki, and it's interesting. That's all I'm going to say. There's so many threads here of narratives that we can weave together for ourselves. So here's Tau Ceti, the belly of the beast, right? The belly. And these animals, right? These beings that live in the ocean, they aren't swimming upright. They are they're not quadrupedal, but they are gliding through the medium with the belly underneath, protected, right? And there is a sense of course, power and willpower and discipline when you have that solar plexus chakra. We know that the belly is something that most animals have protected as a result of their posture and how they move through the world, except for really humans for the most part. I mean, other primates as well kind of have, back and forth, or they kind of walk upright, but not entirely. So it's very easy for them to fold over and protect this area. But, humans, we have it right out in the open and vulnerable and available, right? And so there's something to be said for this and how important it is to reinforce that sense of willpower and discipline, self-discipline, that solar chakra. And I don't know a lot about Tau Ceti starseeds. It's not something that they're not very abundant, right? There aren't a ton of them in my work, at least. But this star is only 12 light years away. I feel like there is a really strong connection to them in terms of us, but they aren't on like the map as much for what's going on here as other starseed positions or origins. So the other thing I want to point about Cetus that's going to be way more relevant later, but is still important now, is that the fixed star of Menkar is in conjunction with Uranus right now. It's within a 1-degree orb and moving towards it, okay? So Menkar is the nose of the beast and the whale. And so when I start getting into the fixed astrology, keep in mind when I talk about this star, how the Uranus is here. And over the course of the next couple of months, we're going to have Mercury, we're going to have Venus, and we're going to have the Sun all conjunct Uranus. And then by the time we get to the summer, Uranus and the North Node are going to come together. So there's also some massive, just really, really strong crisis, self-renewal, massive awakenings that are coming over and over and over, and they're all hovering around this fixed star. So just kind of put a pin in that until we get to talking about Menkar. But this is Tau Ceti. This is where the sun is now. There's something about this that has to do with generating an inner potency and the capacity to generate not only the potency within you, but and to not be as influenced by the outside forces on that potency and life force, but also the ability to work with it rhythmically. This is very connected to Tau Ceti. And so what I do know about them, these star seeds and these star beings, is that they kind of they are like the standard Starship Enterprise type of people, right? They are explorers, they are discoverers, they, go where no one has gone before type of thing. And I know that that's so cliche, but that is really like one of the main traits of these Tau Ceti beings, is that they glide through the medium, right? And they have a sense of inner potency as they move through, on their travels and through the galaxy, whatever they do. So I often will get people that have this degree, when they do have this degree, in a position that's like, you really are meant to take a position, maybe not of leadership necessarily, but the way that you're able to tap into this inner potency and the way to generate life force within your sense of self and confidence and discipline is very strong. And so this is where the sun is today. And again, while we're feeling the gravity of all of this Saturnian connection, and we're also feeling the consistent, pong of back and forth with the Orion Starseed nature and the moon in Gemini, it's here that we're really generating a lot of solar power, actually, that is being generated from this place for us. So, like I said, put a pin in Menkar, because it's going to be, there's a Saturnian element to here. This entire constellation of Cetus has a very strong Saturnian quality to it. And remember that Saturn right now actually in Aquarius is very powerful in Aquarius and is establishing the wall in which we need to scale or climb or strategize a way to deal with or get over as a means of disciplining us, right? As training. So it's a bitter situation, and sometimes it can leave people feeling like, I want to go home, right? I don't want to do this anymore. This is too hard. And there's something about Cetus, there's something, and very much about where the sun is with Tau Ceti. So when we look at the connections with the moon between all of this Aries energy, hopefully that'll shine a little bit of light on how to really go about today, or at least to understand ourselves today. So let us know in the comments, how you're feeling, if you're feeling this, and if you're having a sense of really just, homesick, right? And homesick for a planet that's never coming back. And so being here is actually really, I think that there is a lot of memory for the Mintakan starseeds to be here. And there's a really strong transcendental and cosmic mission with Neptune involved to reestablish what has been learned from that situation in this particular situation. So, but again, it's still Orion Starseed, which I think is really interesting for this water world and this kind of mermaid, cetacean type of energy, to be completely experiencing the realm of consciousness, but in the fields, right? And in the water, in the oceans, right? There is no necessarily anything firm to stand on. And I think that the connection to the Pleiades is exactly how we're able to kind of manage our disappointment, or the fact that we're feeling very isolated, separated, homesick, right? Recognizing that there's just it's very difficult to bridge some sort of gap with other people who are not having these experiences. So, we want to go home, right? We want to go home, whatever that means to us. And there is a lot of anxiety, I think, and depression in particular. So one thing that I actually used, because I really was feeling it this morning, and in fairness, it is, the weather here changed and the barometric pressure dropped, and that always makes things a little tired. But I do have a doTERRA blend that's called Elevation. Let's see if I can show. It's not very good lighting, but it's the joyful blend. So it's just, ways that you can counteract these situations or give yourself an upliftment in some ways. So the moon in Gemini, let's look at it. So the first thing that we're going to see is a sextile. This was very early this morning. There was a sextile with Chiron, and at this position of 17 degrees Aries of Tau Ceti. And so again, what are we here individually to do? How do we inspire people through the performance of our own virtuosity, our own skill set, our own knowledge, whatever it is that we have come to really learn and explore and discover, either within ourselves or from our subconscious, and being able to master that within ourselves is, I think, really, again, with Chiron and where it is, there's so much frustration. There is a sense of like wanting it now and acting out of this frustration. And Chiron, of course, is exactly the agent of getting us to, release all of this energy out of frustration, because the template exists, but we want it now. So the germ can't bust out of the seed until it's time. And if it does, it may not have all of the means to keep growing in a healthy way. So Chiron's the perfect agent to just like pull all of this back and have us act out of frustration. But the moon in sextile, it's like when we identify within ourselves what we can do, how we can perform our own unique consciousness, how we can inspire other people by really mastering this realm within ourselves. I think that it's going to help not only kind of abate this frustration, but it also will allow for a way to move past it, to these old identities, the Chiron wound, the wounded healer. And because other people are feeling frustrated as well. And so this sextile allows us to be able to inspire other people just by way of, doing our own work and coming into alignment with our own consciousness and really showing how we've mastered it over time. So after this is when the moon comes into a sextile with the sun, which is, again, like I said, 17 degrees at Tau Ceti. And this is where that inner potency that we develop, right? This sense of, sometimes there's an inward withdrawal, right? There's a sense of needing to pull in and transform what feels like a natural lack of potency into some sort of inner security. So think about like the ascetic that turns inward and is like living in their meditative state for really long time. But it's not that they're turning away from the idea of duality, but it accepts that there's a higher type of polarization when you do something like that between you and like material and spirit. And that's part of being in material form. And so the two sides of the self where the sun is today is in this eternal back and forth. And it's rejecting all the outside judgments and really just getting into the natural to generate this energy within. And sometimes there's really rejoicing of it, kind of like I maintained my poise and inner security as there are passing rewards, right? But there could be as well with the sun here, really shallow interests that are getting a lot more focus and attention and virtue that, remember, the sun in the second decan of Aries is the Three of Wands. It is virtue. And so there's also, kind of exalting these really shallow interests and, acting like they actually mean something. So that's also part of this as well. But I think for the starseeds in particular, especially if you have Tau Ceti somewhere in your chart, this is really powerful for you and tapping into that ability to, cultivate and generate this inner life force and to live rhythmically with the outside world that doesn't allow your life force to be totally drained, right? And even if you need to be active in some way, like in your body, it's in your own self that finds the stillness. Oh, this is very interesting. So 17 degrees of Gemini is the star Rigel. So let's look actually real quick at the constellation of Orion. Rigel is the front left foot of the Orion hunter, right? So we know that Orion the sun comes into a sextile with this position of the moon in Gemini. And so I have a feeling here that it's going to be in this sextile with the moon and the sun here today. Let's see here. Yeah, this is this morning already, that when we can make the transition from like maybe a robust and kind of immature thought process to a mature thinker to go through some sort of like consciousness metamorphosis, it is being really supported and activated even. There's a moment here with the sun and the moon where we could actually transmute some sort of situation, and maybe that inner potency and that generation of energy within ourselves actually has somewhere to go, which is a mental metamorphosis or a sense of what's the word I'm looking for? A sense of transcendence over what we had been feeling in terms of the back and forth of Gemini, right? Victory in polarization or duality is at best is not permanent, right? Victory in a polarized situation is a temporary experience. And so if you cannot wrap yourself intuitively, emotionally, and in your feelings around that, then this is going to be, yeah, a really difficult, bitter type of time here. So, and wanting to go home, this is not what I signed up for, but oh, it is. It totally is. And not that we sign up for being, traumatized or terrorized or abused in any way. That's not suggesting that we asked for those things, but the larger context of why we came into material form to be part of this process. We definitely did on some level choose it, even, and many starseeds have been like, no, I haven't. I did not choose this. And, or feeling that dichotomy, right? Feeling that tension. So the moon has the sextile with the sun, which means it's going to also sextile Mercury. So this is when it's getting much closer to Mintaka, and a sense of a sense of everything that we need is within us, is there, and we could find ourselves a little bit overzealous about some things. But again, this is a sextile, and everything that we need is available to us because we can access the collective culture, right? We can load up our plate from every steam table on this buffet and have access to multifarious knowledge and information and conscious ideals. This is all available to us. And again, sextile Mercury in Aries, that's like, the mind is open as like a gate to the Garden of Eden, right? This is and with that, I think the connection between Mercury and the moon in this sextile, again, is just another like activation within our own consciousness, a sense of fulfillment in a mental way that is, if we can activate or address that, or even just apply that to the moon in Gemini, we will feel that everything we need is truly available to us, and all of the energy and potency of our mental state is also available to us, as long as we identify, like I said, all of the options that are available to us. You don't want to like waste it, and that's a potential here with Mercury sextile the moon in this position. We absolutely could waste it as well, but I don't really get the sense that the starseeds will do that necessarily. I feel like that there is a moment of recognition of what we do have, and what we are conscious of, and seeing it as like an asset and a sense of inner fulfillment. Beyond that, this is where there's the trine to Saturn and Mars that comes after this, as I said, and this is where we're getting into Mintakan territory. So while it's in a trine to Saturn, the moon, it's going, look at all these bold lines. While it's in a trine to Saturn, it's going to be in a square to Jupiter pretty much at the same time. Now, this is later today, right? This is getting this looks like 7:48 Eastern Standard Time. So the moon is now in conjunction with Mintaka, and having these connections to Saturn. And as difficult as it is today to have this, there is something about the discipline and the training and a sense of really managing our authority in the collective consciousness, in society as a whole, that is actually very much holding it down, while the moon is allowing us to utilize our creative imagination, right? To find the threefold path within ourselves. And it's just coming through a very difficult recognition that there is a force field that we do not go beyond in terms of collective consciousness. And I think this is really where the starseeds and possibly the Mintakan starseeds in general, or in particular, and starseeds in general, I think it's really this that is really frustrating to people, is that the consciousness is going to be where it is. And our job is to be in alignment with it, to be the best version of ourselves within it. But there's no going past it until it's time. And that's what Saturn represents, is time. And so our creative imagination is actually very much stabilized right now by Saturn and Mars, actually, in Aquarius, that are acting on the greater good, and holding down the resonance of the collective as a force field, as a structure, as a fortress, and at the same time, though, you're going to find that the moon is in a square to the Jupiter and Neptune in Pisces, right? So they're in square to Mintaka as well. And this is where I think the homesickness really kind of reaches a crescendo or a climax in some ways. But what it allows for is that, yes, there is this square between the moon in Gemini, these starseed aspects of Orion, into squaring with Neptune and Jupiter, which are also starseed aspects for Orion. There's tension there. There's conflict there, because within us we feel the duality that exists within everything. And Neptune and Jupiter are like, what duality? It's all the same. We're all coming from the same place. We're all acting in accordance to one singular unity consciousness and giving everything that we have to that. It's the trine with Mars, actually, between the moon and Mars, that is, I think, our saving grace today. Because the moon will have moved past Mintaka, but it's still very close. And the idea that we can use our inhibiting circumstances, much like ice, to triumph over entropy. And that's something that the Mintakan starseeds had to learn, I think, the hard way when they lost their planet, because there is no ice to skate on when you live on a water world. Presumably, it's all water and it's all liquid. When we can see that these inhibiting circumstances give us an opportunity to transcend them without the duality, we don't realize our own victory in a way. Mars is going to be one of our best allies in this instance, because this is a moment where Mars, all about drive and passion, by the way, is in a position to be able to overcome it and to teach, from that place of wisdom, rather than being consumed by drive and passion and output. And again, Mars is acting in the greater good. So I think there's actually something really, really beneficial here for that. And so let me show you just real quick. We'll look at Mintaka again, right? And the belt of Orion. And I want to actually take a minute to talk about, Mintaka is a star and has a very strong Saturnian element to it. And Cetus as a constellation has incredibly Saturnian element to it. In fact, it's like very much related to Saturn, the constellation of Cetus, the sea monster. And like I said, Menkar, so keep this in mind, is definitely the nature of Saturn. And it really will portend a lot of danger, disgrace, ill fortune, ruin, calamity. And we have Uranus involved here to just make sure that you realize that this is the type of situation that triggers renewal, self-renewal, activation, evolution, and awakening. And so, yes, there's going to be these really strong Saturnian aspects that are going to feel like ruin. And again, this is probably what is really part of the experience right now of being homesick and be like, I don't want to do this anymore, because we can feel what's coming, right? And we can feel the homesickness to being in a place, especially if you are a Mintakan starseed, in a place where it was fluid, right? That there wasn't the duality necessarily And it's the experience of losing your world, I think, and being kind of lonely and homesick that actually forces you into the Gemini dynamic, because you realize that there is, in fact, an equal but opposite position to total immersion in the waters of our soul, and that is coming into true material form and being so disconnected from our soul and the waters of our soul that we don't even realize that we are part of something bigger than ourselves. So, and Saturn's not making this easy, but I also feel like this is kind of like the taskmaster that we really, it's beyond taskmaster, like a really strong role model. And take that for what you will. I know Saturn's got a bad rap because there are plenty of factions and interests that feel like that perhaps worshiping this planet and appealing to the materialistic nature that it's connected to is somehow going to lead them in the right direction. So I know that Saturn continues to get bad press. But it is what it is, and we are here in a material universe, whether we like it or not, because this is part of our mission. So accepting that and understanding the dynamics is more important than just shutting it down, because some people have exploited and exploited themselves, exploited their gifts, and exploited the power of these planetary beings, I guess you could say. So I'm gonna leave it there. We're like, oh, this went a lot longer than I thought, and man, I didn't even notice. Right, I did not even notice. It was just streaming through. So I'm going to leave it there. Thank you so much for being here. I truly appreciate each and every one of you. If you're interested in Starseed Ministry, you can check out that video that's linked in the description box below, or at the end of this video, you can check out the website if you're interested in a reading, Starseed reading, energy work to support your process. And I will see you guys tomorrow for the Daily Medicine transmission. I love you. Take care of yourself. Take care of each other. Peace out. Bye.